Daily Devotion with Pastor Balla for July 30th, 2022 from Ezekiel chapter 19, A Lament for Our Leaders, Part 1. A lament for our leaders? Usually we think of a lament because of our leaders. But we need to realize that God has given us leaders to guide and care for the people. But like the citizens they govern, we are all a bunch of sinners, and we don't always look out for the common good of everyone. So we should not be surprised when leaders disappoint us. This is not only true in the secular government, but it's also true in the church government. So let's begin with Ezekiel chapter 19, verse 1. And you take up a lamentation for the princes of Israel. Notice the phrase, princes of Israel. This is referring to the leadership. But during this time, you may remember, they also utilized kings. And yes, kings very often disappointed God. So Ezekiel, or God through Ezekiel, does not call them kings. Why? Because there's really only one true king. The God Almighty is King of the universe. Verse 2. And say, what was your mother? A lioness. Among lions she crouched. In the midst of young lions she reared her cubs. And she brought up one of her cubs. And he became a young lion. And he learned to catch prey. He devoured men. So why would the leaders of God be associated with a lion? Well, you may remember how Jacob, or if you want to call him Israel, blessed one of his sons, Judah. From Genesis chapter 49, verse 8. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion, and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? So yes, there is a beautiful illustration here, and ultimately, we need to realize that Jesus is a descendant of the line of Judah. You see, Jesus will break down the greatest of enemies. That's sin, death, and the devil. When Jesus dies on the cross to complete our salvation, and God saves humanity through that special event. Verse 4, the nations heard about him. He was caught in their pit, and they brought him with hooks to the land of Egypt. When she saw that she waited in vain, that her hope was lost, she took another of her cubs and made him a young lion. Verse 6, he prowled among the lions. He became a young lion, and he learned to catch prey. He devoured men and seized their widows. He laid waste their cities, and the land was appalled, and all who were in it at the sound of his roaring. Verse 8, then the nations set against him from provinces on every side. They spread their net over him. He was taken in their pit. With hooks they put him in a cage and brought him to the king of Babylon. They brought him into custody, that his voice should no more be heard on the mountains of Israel. So here's the idea, that when the leaders were faithful to God, God worked through the leaders to protect the people of Israel. And the people of Israel were able to overcome their enemies. But when the leaders left God and chased their own desires, well, then they became prey to the other nations. So the leaders would be taken. They would be the first ones taken into exile, into Babylon. But should we not rejoice? Well, we should not rejoice, because this is a lament. Because what happens when leadership, whether it's good or bad, is taken away? In the absence of leadership, there is chaos. We see that even in today's world, where there is a lack of leadership, and indeed chaos among the people. So yes, there should be a lament because the leaders were taken away. Lesson for today, we should be concerned and raise up good leaders, not only for our secular government, but also for the church, because we need good leadership. Else, we also will go into chaos. God's peace and many blessings be with you, and thank you for listening. And please take an opportunity to share this message with others. If you have enjoyed these daily devotions, please consider making a donation to Peace Lutheran Church, 24024 West Main Street, Plainfield, Illinois, 60544. Thank you again for listening.